Hi there and welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth. Thank you for joining me. Welcome back to those who have been here before. If you've been paying attention to the numerology series, today we're going to be talking about ruling number 6 and the general specifics that apply through the various numerical sequences. But of course, we look at it from a general perspective. And I must warn, it's not standalone. There are other influences on a person as far as their personality traits go and the life path. I just need to warn you, I think up front, today's going to be a long one. I'm going to try and fly through it as best I can, but there's a number of sequences. You'll see why when we get to that stage. So just bear with me. On to the next slide. So just a reminder that when we're calculating a person's ruling number, we add up the numbers of the birth date and we reduce it down to a primary number between 1 to 9, unless it is an 11, a 22 or a 33, in which case they're said to be master numbers and to have specific power and energy associated to them. We'll be talking about that further in the master numbers once we've got through the primary number ruling numbers. We've also discussed previously that with Pythagorean numerology concepts, numbers vibrate to either the masculine or the feminine. And within the context of this, 6 is an even number, so therefore it's said to resonate as a feminine number. It's associated with the colour of silver, whereas odd numbers are associated with the colour gold and the sun. So as a feminine number, 6 is said to resonate more with the intuitive and feeling side of life. And this is also revisited if we were to look at the birth chart. The number 6 is on what is called the mind plane. Let me just check my 3, 6, 9. Yes, it's on the mind plane. So the reason why this particular video is going to take a little longer, as long as I can really get through it, is because of the amount of sequences that can make a ruling 6. And you can see them here without me going into them. Basically, the 6 is a ruling number of extremes. It's got great creative power when a person is living positively. And when they're living negatively, they can be incessant worriers. As I said before, the 6 is centered on the mind plane. So 3, 6, 9, it's centered, it's right in the middle. So whilst they have the creative abilities and potential, worrying can be their downfall, and it can actually lead to self-destruction and even self-sabotage. We won't be talking today about the 33.6 because that's actually a master number as far as ruling numbers go. So we'll look at this when we get to the master numbers. So from a general perspective, people with the ruling 6 tend to be very loving and humane. As said, they do have an artistic and creative aspect to their personalities as well. They're just, with their friends actually, they're incredibly loyal, generous, patient, and they tend to tolerate a lot more than others would, especially when it comes to unsavoury behaviours, because they'll often make excuses for people as to why they do what they do. They have a really strong humanitarian streak within them and a strong dislike of any form of hypocrisy and injustice, and they are actually prepared to fight for their ideals and beliefs. Now, any fights that they may have are underpinned by a desire for peace within their surroundings, and this is also the area and space within where their creative aspect can be expressed. They have a love of the home, and they particularly like their home to be beautiful. So their expression of creativity often is in the home, having beautiful things. Now, to put this into perspective, it doesn't mean that they've got to have a big flash house with all the mod cons and all the rest of it. It can mean that within their home, if they have a very small home, or even if their home is just a room as part of a house sharing with other people, that's going to have to offer them a certain level of comfort, and there will be a space within their personal space that they allocate and dedicate to beautiful things, if you like. They definitely have a kind, loving and sympathetic nature when living in the upright, and as such, their persona is one that can invite people to trust in them. They invite confidences, and this lends itself to them having an inherent wisdom and understanding of other people and their motivations. They're often considered to be a guardian of the cosmos, if you like, and there's a particular numerological sequence that we'll see down the track. They're the ones that are the guardians of the cosmos more so than the other ones. But what is important, really, really important to the six, is that they need their relationships to be very meaningful and to be based in love, truth, and honest communication. We can say that's the fundamental for all people within relationships, but for the six, there's a reason why it's essential that they strive for this, and we'll talk about that as far as impacts go for the six if they are unable to make their relationships fulfilling. We'll talk about that soon. The humanitarian endeavours are their primary life path, and that can manifest in many different ways. And this is largely because they have the ruling six tends to take responsibility for stuff that actually isn't always theirs. But it's that humanitarian conscience which kind of says, that if I'm not actively doing something to address change, then I'm complicit in injustice. So they take on board responsibility, and they're serious about trying to improve situations for other people and to help them rise above their problems or any forms of injustice that these people might experience across their life path. What else can I say? They can be quite creative in finding solutions for people as well as themselves, actually. To help uplift other people's mood in the face of adversity. These are just traits. Actually, I probably should have said when we talk about the humanitarian activities for the ruling six, it's not so much as a trait, it's observable as a trait, but it's more like a driving force, and this is why it's part of the life path on that slide as opposed to the distinctive traits, okay? For the six, as far as distinctive personality traits go, there is that need to create sanctuary. Home must be a sanctuary. It must feel safe, warm, and comfortable. As said before, they can be extremely tolerant, very unselfish towards the people that they love, because they tend to be very loving and kind. I already said that they draw upon creativity in the home, because that's so important to them. The home has to feel safe. When I think of a six and I think about the home, I also think about that song, Wherever I Lay My Hat, That's My Home, right? So they will turn wherever they are at, even if it's a temporary accommodation, they will turn it into a type of sanctuary for them, for themselves and their family, actually. So while for many people creativity is expressed through the home, there are other people with a ruling six who take that creativity to the world stage, if you like. You might find them in prominent roles in humanitarian organisations. They could actually be lawyers, social justice lawyers, very focused on fairness and equity, or in some instances, these creative talents can become the talents such as singing, dancing, writing, and the arts. We're going to talk about negative traits in a moment, but before we go there, I'll just say that one of their traits is they have this overwhelming desire for peace at any price. And this is where tolerance and compassion and that kind of stuff can be misconstrued as a weakness, or it can be overexploited and destructive to the happiness. But let's take a look at negative traits now. So as much as the ruling six has got these wonderful attributes, you can say, there also is the spin side of that if they allow themselves to become overwhelmed with the negative, it can be a real trap, okay? So because they take their responsibilities so seriously, they can become extreme warriors and suffer from, did I say warriors? I meant warriors with an O, not an A. They can be real worriers and develop anxiety or anxiety type conditions, and this traps them into cycles of stress. Now, if they find restrictions placed upon them, for instance, if they become locked into gender stereotypes at home, oh, she's just a mum, or she's just a dad, or she's just a housewife, or she's just X or Y, there can be a risk of the six becoming a little bit fanatical. And then there are instances, certainly if they are locked into the home environment, that they may develop an unbalanced possessiveness about their family members and their loved ones. Not so much possessions, more about people. And if this is allowed to continue, shall we say, they're going to experience a lot of imbalance across all areas of their life, shall we say. It's also going to bring negative consequences because other people around them, that jealousy and possessiveness can be overwhelming for the people around them. So it just puts pressure on relationships is where I'm going. They may also fall into the positions of whinging and fault finding or over dramatizing in their lives. This is the people that are living in the negative aspect. The worst case scenarios, they can develop a mild psychosis, and that is once they've actually burned their bridges with relationships because they haven't learned the skills to manage their emotional responses, and then they end up feeling very isolated and alone. Now, part of the problems actually is because of the kindness of the person, so it becomes it definitely is a trap. I'll explain to you. I'll just think for a moment on how I'm going to explain this. Okay, so for example, because of their caring natures and because of their capacity to have people confide their problems in them, and because of their ability to take on more responsibility than they need to, it lends itself to this idea of, saving, rescuing type behaviours. And they invest so much of their emotions and love into these family and friends, there is a risk that they can become codependent. And this also is particularly unhealthy. The extreme negatives, if they go too far down the negative pathway, they may develop, well, I'm trying to be kind, there is a potential for them to develop an attitude of an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth kind of thing, a little bit of vindictiveness. And so the ruling sixes here would be reminded that's not a good pathway to go down. It's going to have unsavoury consequences, and it will definitely create negative karma for you in this lifetime at least, if not future lifetimes. So there's a lot of advice and suggestions here for the people with the ruling six, and the primary one is to maintain focusing a balance of energy in everything that they do. So it's, work-life balance, it's emotional balance, and just across all areas. So putting this into perspective here, meditation is suggested and recommended because it will help a person to understand and know their limits, and to retain a balance and to recognise within themselves when they might be taking it too far. I would also suggest, actually, bearing in mind this is on my YouTube channel, that these people actually have a look at the video series that I've put up on relationship boundaries and friendship circles as part of helping them to manage their boundaries, to know their limits, and to become more self-aware and recognise when their generosity is being exploited, because this will all help them. All of these techniques will help them to avoid any codependency issues, and it will help them to recognise when they need to put constraints in place, because if they start to feel used and abused, this is when the problems come in for them. So one of the key messages for them actually is to guard, right? This is boundaries, to guard against resentful or bitter feelings because they feel they give more than they actually receive. But this is because of their generous nature, okay? Then the other advice for them is to fully master their emotions and to learn to lovingly detach from their responsibilities, so that they're free to attend to this path of humanitarian service work, which they're not going to be able to achieve if they're allowing other people to exploit their time and emotions and that kind of thing, because the humanitarian area is where they're going to express their creativity as well. They've got a good path, or they've got an important path. We all do, but this is relevant to the 6. So anyway, moving on. So suitable vocations, okay, well, look, whipping along as best we can. Obviously, humanitarian organisations as their healers, perhaps counselling and the therapies or psychotherapies, because of their ability to engender trust from the people that they work with. Anything that involves art and design. A lot of people who are 6s think they have no artistic talent until they actually give it a try. And then, of course, singing and dancing. We already covered that. So these are just some of the areas where the 6 will excel. Oh, I'm going to try and whip through this. Okay, people with a ruling number 15.6, they have a lot of internal strength. They're very magnetic and charismatic. They have a practical approach to life. They are representing the tarot by the devil, because obviously they are attached to material, if you like, for want of a better description. They obviously have these inherent artistic gifts as well, but what sets them apart is they're actually quite dedicated. They will demonstrate perseverance in to achieve their professional and financial goals, but there is a caution. They are advised that they need to tread carefully and be mindful that they don't step on the toes of powerful people, right? Because that'll just backfire on them. Also, because it's a particularly potent number combination, they're advised to use their power for positive ends for all people, and that they should not become too attached to the material world or too judgmental, because that's when they will feel locked in, and they might find that they it becomes that entrapment of the money, where they're completely miserable, because we all know money's not everything, and they feel that they can't get out of it. So it's their own self-imposed prison, if you like. And it's a bit like the excuses that you hear for people who are in unhappy marriage. Oh, I can't leave, it will cost me too much. So the number of a 15.6 is either a vice or a virtue, depending on the levels of personal awareness and realisation that the person has. And that is, they need to be reminded they do have choices. And I'm just checking my notes here. Basically, encouraged to be mindful and conscious of any emotional dependencies that foster greed that can control them. When these can be controlled, the 15.6 will rise above the limitations and bondage and be able to access the planes of higher consciousness, which this is obviously part of their goal. They are very spiritual people as well, when living upright. We all have upright and reversed. When they're living upright, many of the 15.6s will actually find themselves fighting against tyranny. They may get involved in political causes as part of trying to raise the life experiences for big groups of people. Okay, I think that's all I can add to that. So people with a ruling 24.6 are very good-natured and generous individuals. They've got a sharp mind, a vivid imagination. They have an intelligent awareness, and it's this awareness that shapes their humanitarian beliefs, because they're able to attract life comforts that are necessary for their happiness and contentment. They also have a love of the home. They make good parents and good companions because of their sympathetic nature. This good nature is what draws support from other people, particularly those people in prominent positions, that can help them to achieve the success that they're looking for, right? Because they are quite sunny, ambitious people, personality types, always very optimistic, and they like to take pride in what they do and who they are, and they gain a sense of happiness and satisfaction from creating that loving and successful life. And they also measure their happiness, or their success, actually, they measure their success by ensuring that they are able to support others to live contentedly, so that they can feel fulfilled. Now, to translate that, in very simple words, they get joy from knowing that they've been able to help other people achieve their goals. That gives them a great sense of satisfaction and a sense of self-worth. So the 24/6 is capable of expressing their personal truth, especially in regard to justice and fairness. And as said, they tend to do well financially because they also have a really good business ability. Um, Now, the other thing that's relevant to mention here is some people may not be aware of it. I suggest they do a little bit of work, because they will probably with great ease be able to step into at least their intuitive gifts, if not their psychic and clairvoyant powers. So yes, I would definitely be encouraging them to develop these gifts through meditation, and also to remind the 24/6 to avoid any codependency, because for this particular numerical sequence, it's important for them to have independent expression. So pushing myself, go faster, go faster. Okay, the 42/6 really has these verbal skills, if you like. They're exceptional diplomats, okay, and they're also very honest and very ethical. So all this stuff, the integrity of personality and beliefs is important to them, and that becomes very attractive to people around them, because not only do they carry this ethos about them, they're also receptive to other people's problems, and they're very compassionate. So these people are called the natural peacemakers. So once again, we're looking at Jersey. Oh my God, I'm making up new words. We're looking at justice once again with the 6 here, but within this context, it's really combined with the aspects of mercy. That's where the Jersey came in. The real compassionate drive. So once again, these people are attracted to all things beautiful, and visually. I can't think of the word. Can you think of the word? You know what I mean. Is the word aesthetic appealing? They love beautiful visuals and balance, and they also are attracted to things such as the mystical concepts and the metaphysics and that kind of thing. They have an expansive imagination, and they're quite able to inspire others by using their talents, which of course is diplomacy. They have that great love for the family, is represented again here with the home life, and once again, it's absolutely essential for them as part of providing solid foundations for these people, for the 42/6 to reach their potential. Another representation, of course, is this business of taking responsibilities seriously, because they do have integrity, they do take their responsibilities seriously, and so we would be reminding them to be careful of self-sacrifice for useless causes, if you like, because at the end of the day, these people would be more at risk of becoming bitter and resentful for being used and abused. So the 42/6 is encouraged to be discriminating at all times about who and where they invest their time and energy. So the 51/6s you tend to find as leaders, often in legal professions, potentially lawyers or police enforcement or accounting. If you're talking about accounting, it could be tax specialists or conveyancing. Either way, the 51/6 has got leadership qualities and capacity to organise large groups of people. So you might find them as the heads of corporations. Once again, justice and fair play are key values to them. They're very good in emergencies such as life and death situations. They have the capacity to see both sides of a situation, so they're very good strategists and probably mediators and negotiators. They tend to approach problem resolution and goal attainment methodically and with wisdom. They're very, this is where that perceptive side comes in. They can kind of anticipate what's the best way of going about it and what steps to take. So the method would be, it's like Rome's not built in a day. Chip by chip, day by day, we get to the goal, right? So these people are the true humanitarians, and these are the ones, the 51/6s, that are referred to as the cosmic guardian. I actually don't know of anybody that I could find out of famous people that was a 51/6. Oh, these ones, yes, these ones might be interested in an eye for an eye as well. Not good, okay? Yeah, we discussed that in the previous slide. That applies to this one as well. Try to avoid eye for an eye. There's no need for vindictiveness. And we'll talk about that another time. So the people with the 60/6, they tend to be sought out by other people because they're very tolerant, they're dependable, they're compassionate, they're fair, they're intelligent. But more than anything is that these people with this sequence, they are able to really look at a situation and be unbiased about it, and to be impartial and objective. That's that seeing two sides of a situation. I'd take it a step further and say they're able to really stand above a problem and take that bird's eye perspective and not just see both sides of a story, but also see the potential influences that might come up and interrupt a peacemaking negotiation, or what is leaving. If there's been a whole big conflict, it's okay. It'd be things like, well, we don't need to worry about that anymore because that person's leaving, all right? Because they will see that that person has been creating a lot of the conflict without necessarily being told. They've just got this intuitive ability. They also have the creative talents as well as healing capacity, because I guess their balanced perception of humanity. I think the best way to say it is they're not particularly judgmental. They generally respect differences. We're talking in the upright, of course, which is probably why they make good healers. Okay, they can, what are my notes here? They can achieve satisfaction on all levels of existence if they apply determination and courage. They will be able to expand their own conscious awareness and reach what's a higher vibration, if you like, to that higher understanding of spirit and spiritual law. These people also have a love of travel. They're very curious about foreign countries and cultures. So they would be encouraged to go, to take those holidays that they want to have, to travel the distances as part of gaining that knowledge, and also for providing their need for adventure and stimulation, to keep their mind active. Once again, family will be important to these people. So I have to be honest, with the 69/6, I actually don't know anybody with this numerical sequence. So any interpretations I have here about the 69/6 is based on, you may as well say, book knowledge, my studies, and also my own intuitive understanding and feel for the numbers, okay? So with the 69/6, there will be the love, contentment, security, and this expanded universal consciousness when the person's living upright and positively. I would expect that they would have a lot of personal energy, like be very, at least psychologically, busy in their mind. And they would enjoy the good things of life. Beauty, of course, is going to be important to them, as will be the need for the emotional and psychological balance. There would be this inherent knowledge that everybody's got to work in some way. Everybody's got to make a contribution, and everybody gets what they put out. That actually ties in with the I don't know, it'll be a law that I haven't covered yet, but it's the principles of gifting precedes receiving. So we all have to invest and be doing to actually reap the benefits of our rewards. It's like you're not going to get a harvest if you don't put the seeds in and grow the crop, Anyway, with this particular ruling number, security and contentment will be necessary to their overall well-being. It's got a very high degree of spirituality associated with it, plus this awareness of oneness, if you like, that we're all interconnected, this spiritual consciousness. They will recognize that status and wealth are not an ends in themselves, but rather a means of contributing to the welfare of humanity. So if they did do very well financially, which this is here in the energy of the numbers, that they could do very well financially, they would hold that philosophy that the philanthropist, they would probably have their preferred charities or whatever as part of paying it forward, and that will provide good karma to them You know what I mean? That pay it forward is a good karmic approach for current life and future life. There's also an environmental edge to this number as well. So when it comes to their philanthropic endeavours, I would probably expect to see them doing things like preservation of land or whatever, or regeneration of land as well, or the animals, where areas perhaps used to have wolves, for example, and now there's none there because they've changed the habitat environment. That regeneration, restoring the land and then restocking it with the natural species. I would expect to see these people in those kind of activities. So in an effort to really kick this along, and sorry, it's probably going to bother the 78.6s. I don't think there's going to be too many of them around anyway. This is actually one of the highest realizations on the material and spiritual planes. Okay, these people will have a strong will. They'll have a lot of initiative. They'll have moral integrity and great determination to achieve an elevated position of prestige and luxury. It's associated with money, but it's not wealth that for the sake of wealth, if you know what I mean. These people have got ideals and ethics, and these are the real philanthropists. Where we were touching on it with the last one, these are the ones that it's like they've got the Midas touch and just magic, okay? And they can make, Midas touch, I'll stick with that. That's probably the easiest description. Anyway, they would be encouraged to use their talents to promote the environmental issues. They believe that the inner essence of humanity and the cosmic laws that govern it have to be not just understood, but they have to be believed in it. You've got to have faith. So this life is not just about a physical manifestation of their power. They actually live by it, okay? So there's joy, wisdom, and fulfillment, and they turn this into harmony and balance across all the planes, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual. So they would be advised to always maintain and seek balance in all things as part of creating this harmony, and have the blessed life that they're quite capable of living, moving along. Wouldn't we all want to be a 78.6? So when I was trying to find famous people with a ruling number of a 24, of a 6 actually, most of them that I managed to find were either a 24.6 or the 33.6, which is a master number. Okay, so we can't talk about that one. So on this slide, we're looking at a bunch of 24.6s. The first thing that we see, I'm going to refer to Johann Strauss. He does have the ruling number of 6, but he also had the number of a day number. And the day number, of course, does carry influences, but we're going to talk about day numbers at a later time as well. So anyway, a little bit of background about him. For those that aren't aware, he was highly developed and intuitive, and he had a compassionate nature, and this is reflected in his birth chart. He does have markers, from what I can see, of psychic ability in his birth chart, because he has an arrow of determination. So that basically says they will achieve success and completion of goals, because they have this capacity to just focus, doggedly on the goal and not allow themselves to be distracted from the end vision, okay? But, right, there's a but with him. He was credited with composing about 500 orchestral masterpieces, so we've got that creative element there. But the other thing that I find fascinating, he had a nervous breakdown in 1853, and he did recover and he did return to work, but he did experience a lot of personal and political challenges. He had a conflict with his father, the death of a wife, a failed second marriage, and that failure. So here we have an example of when the negative starts to impact on the creative ability. With his second marriage, it wasn't a good marriage, and he ended up withdrawing from his career, if you like. There was a bit of a sabbatical, And it was when he married the third time, because he divorced his second wife, that she encouraged him to continue with his work, which he did up until he died. Now, Steve Irwin, he's an interesting one. He actually has a master number as a day number. But when we take a look at his birth chart, there's a lot of twos on it. And this indicates that he was actually, whether we knew about him from watching the TV or not, this is the stuff that's in his birth chart and based on his numbers. He was a highly sensitive, compassionate individual. However, he would have struggled to process his own emotions and to be able to express them. So he wouldn't be the sort of person that would talk about his own feelings, right? He just would feel them. He has the arrow of the Inquirer in his birth chart. So the interesting thing with that is, although he's got the feelings and the sensitivities and that kind of stuff, he obviously still had that scientific aspect to him where he would develop these thoughts and go, well, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? In fact, that actually might have been the motivating force behind him living the lifestyle that he did, because he had theories and he wanted to provide evidence to the scientists to understand the nature of animals. I don't know, people close to him would probably have a better answer to that. Other famous ruling sixes, I've included Candace Owen in this demographic because she's got a ruling number of the 42-6, okay? So she's not just a 24-6 actually. She carries the arrow of the Inquirer, as does Steve. And I think it's worth mentioning that based on the year of her birth and her humanitarian consciousness that we do see on YouTube and social media, whether we agree with her opinions or not, she would have been born at a time that we referred to as people or children being indigo. Basically, they're born with an indigo aura, indicoloured aura. And the reference of that is there's a capacity to see to the heart of problems. I'm just reading my notes here because I sort of put this up. I'd be very surprised. Let's say I was interviewing her, okay, I would be saying, Candace, I'm just wondering, have you always been able to hone in on the heart of a problem and just zoom in and not allow that zoom to be distracted by the BS of what we see on the surface? Have you always been able to do that? Because just because a person is born within that time frame where we say indigo children, which incidentally is from about 1980, they're not necessarily going to be an indigo child. She has a day number that's a master number. Okay, so this is what I think makes her interesting to me. She carries a day number of what is the 29/11, and it's number of teaching. So in a way, what she's doing by providing information to people is she's actually teaching people. She's giving them information to make choices. I'm just looking at... Okay, this is just an opinion piece. If she wants to be a truly credible teacher or information sharer, message to myself here as well, the key is to withhold our judgment, or at least to identify where we may have a bias, okay? So my observations of watching her, and I haven't seen too many of her clips, is that she actually is very transparent about her biases, and I think that's healthy. Have a bias by all means. We're all different. We all have different views. Try not to judge people for having their opinions though. I think she would make a really interesting numerology case study, but because she's living, I think it would be intrusive and invasive. So I'm not going to go into her much further. Okay, other famous sixes include Jesse Jackson, Billy Connolly. Oh my God, I love him. I would have loved to have done one more of him. And then we've got a couple of interesting ones that are ruling sixes, and I'm going to save them for later. In the meantime, let's have a look at a birth chart. So Eddie Murphy is actually a really interesting case. And once again, because he's still living, I want to sort of navigate this a little bit carefully, right? Because He does have an interesting birth chart. If you look at that, he's got, we can make assumptions and go, okay, oh, wow, he's got a 0 on the spirit plane. That means that he's got no spirit. That's not the case at all, okay? There are other things that come into play. What that particular arrow means is, which one is that? That's not the arrow of intellect. It's the arrow of hypersensitivity. Oh my God. Right, I'm taking a breath because I know this one quite well. I don't know why I had to look it up again as I was talking to you. Okay, with the fact that he actually has no numbers on that plane is probably an asset, is where I'm going, because he's got the arrow of hypersensitivity. And if that plane was full of numbers, because he's hypersensitive, well, you wouldn't have the arrow of hypersensitivity. It compensates, is where I'm going, for the fact that there is potentially a struggle there for the processing of emotions, shall we say. The other thing too is, of course, he's got the arrow of intellect, which is the blue one. And I should remind myself that when I'm talking about arrows and pointing my finger at the screen, you're not going to actually see me doing it. Right, so basically people with the arrow of the intellect generally are very bright and happy personas. They prefer actually the intellectual, they prefer to think than do. But fortunately for him, while he doesn't have many numbers, well, he's got none on the spirit plane, he does have a pretty good balance on the physical doing. So he's not just a talker, he is a walker and a talker, right? So what else can I add? As much as he's a comedian and hilariously funny in his own ways, he would have to work to develop tolerance and compassion, and to avoid being a little bit snobby towards people that aren't too clever. He must be pretty darn clever, I would say. There is also the indicator here that they're actually happiest when they're doing things for others. So the only people that can actually tell us whether or not this is true or accurate is those people that know them closely. I tend to find that family members are really good at providing feedback on this stuff. Okay, so just another trait that would be here is that he would mask his feelings, okay? So because he's got that arrow of hypersensitivity, his feelings will be very easily hurt, but he will have learned from a very young age to mask the pain, and that is probably where his humour comes from, because he's learned to turn it into a laugh and a joke. I'm just looking at the other notes that I've put on here, and I actually think it's it would take it too far. It's too vulnerable or too personal. Especially with the arrow of hypersensitivity, okay? My mother has an arrow of hypersensitivity, which is why I'm so attuned to what that's like for the person. They would definitely be encouraged to continue to develop that inner awareness, to become aware of their strengths and their vulnerabilities, so that they can actually have a more balanced approach to achieving, what it is they're trying to build personally and emotionally. Anyway, I think that's it. And it is. We're finished for today. So I would just like to say thank you for being part of my journey again today. Thanks for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Feel free to share any of the content I put up. And in the meantime, I will hopefully see you on the Friday video or the Sunday video, and I will appraise you of the developments that I've got with IT. But anyway, take care, my friends. I shall catch you soon. Bye-bye.